Okay, good morning. I have been asked to dedicate this shiur to the memory of two different people. One is Rachel Bat Esther, who was a wonderful woman I had an opportunity to meet. She was the mother of a good friend of my wife's, and she just passed away this week. And Ruth is making a donation to the chat, to the coffee kupa for that thing in her memory. And also this coming Monday night, Tuesday, is the second Askara, I believe, from Mas'uda Bataya, who's the mother of Florence Silverstein. And we remember her. She used to come here when she was able to every Shabbat, and I don't know how she made it up the stairs. I could barely make it up the stairs. She made it up the stairs every Shabbat to come and enjoy the tefillah. So whatever words of Torah we say today should be for these two, Rachel Bat Esther, Masuda Bat Leah, and Aliyah Neshama, that their Neshama should get closer and closer to the throne in Gan Eden, the Kisei Kavod. Amen. Ken Yeh Ratzon. So the Gemara in Sanhedrin has this story about these two dogs that would always fight each other. They were enemies. They were just always going after each other. And one day a wolf comes along and he attacks one of the dogs. So the second dog says, if that wolf kills my enemy, who's he going to come after next? He's going to come after me, right? So the enemy dogs decided to join force, and they combined their strengths, and together they were able successfully to kill the wolf. That's the Gemara in Sanhedrin. So the question is, what's this talking about? And the Gemara says, well, basically, the enemies were the nations of Moab and Midian. This week we read Parashat Balak, and the parasha starts off that Balak was the king of Moab at that time. And that's interesting, at that time, because what do you mean? He wasn't king of Balak. He wasn't. No, the answer is he wasn't even from Moab. He was probably from Midian himself. But in any case, Moab and Midian were two nations that never saw peace with each other. They were like the two dogs. They were always fighting each other, and both saw miraculously that Bnei Israel defeated other huge nations that were in the desert. One was Sihon, one was Bashan, and the Emori, the Bashan, and two powerful kings, Sihon and Og. And what happened was they said, we're next. Bnei Israel is coming through. They're powerful. They're on their way from Egypt. And now they're ready to go into Eretz Israel. And they asked to go through the land of Moab. They said, and we'll pay you. Don't worry. If we take your water, we'll pay for it. If we take your food, we'll pay for it. But they feared that they were next. And so therefore they said, we're warring nations, but we're going to put our differences aside to achieve our common goal, to defeat Bnei Israel. You see it all the time today. What's it called in English? What's the expression? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Somebody's awake. Okay, that's without coffee. Congratulations. The more things change, the more things are the same, and the lessons and the stories in the Torah really speak to us. So Balak, he was actually a prince from Midian, and he was appointed right now to be the king over Moab. So what does this Balak character do? He's got to protect his nation of Moab. So what he does is he sends a delegation, mostly from people from Moab, important people, some people from Midian as well, and he sends them to this known sorcerer named Bilam. Now, Bilam is a very interesting character, and he's got name brand recognition. People hear the name Bilam, oh, we know who he is. He's a sorcerer. He can place curses on people. He knows God's thoughts. He was a very holy man, actually. So Rashi says, why did Moab send to get Bilam from Midian? He says, you know why? He says, because they understood who Moshe was. Moshe Rabbeinu spent a lot of time with Midian. He spent years in that country, maybe even as many as 60 years, according to some sources. Moshe was in Midian, and they know what's the secret of Moshe. And what is the secret of Moshe? It's his mouth, the power of his words, the words of Torah. They know that. And so Balak with Moab, they're trying to figure this out. What's the strength of Moshe Rabbeinu and the Jewish people? It's his mouth, it's his words, and it's these things. So Moab said, we are going to fight fire, with his magic incantations, with his curses. We'll overpower Moshe's prayers, and we'll be able to put a curse on Bnei Israel. It's a big deal. You got a curse on Bnei Israel, but what's going on over here? Bil'am, according to our rabbis, you have to understand, he gets a bad rap from us, but the truth is that he had spiritual powers. He did. And in some respects, in some respects, even greater than Moshe Rabbeinu was Bil'am. In some respects. We always sing in the Yigdal every Friday night, Lo kam b'Yisrael ke Moshe od. There never was a Navi. There never was a prophet like Moshe, but the caveat was b'Yisrael. But with the nations of the world, they did have, and they had a Bil'am. And he was a very spiritual, very holy man. But he had some weaknesses, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So Bil'am, he was really driven by greed. He couldn't get rid of that midah. You know, you can be as holy as you want to, but if you have bad midot, you're not going anywhere in this world, except down. Bil'am said, if God would allow me to curse Bnei Israel, then I'd be more than happy to do it. So Bil'am received this delegation that came to visit him from Moab, and they said, we want you to come and curse Klal Yisrael. If you curse the Jewish people with your name recognition, with your spiritual powers, you know what that's going to do? That's going to take Balak's army and give them the courage and the strength. We can conquer, we can beat, we can fight, we can win. But without that name brand recognition of a Bil'am, nothing's going to happen. They needed encouragement. They needed something. So they come and they ask, you got to come curse Bnei Israel. So Bil'am says, I don't know. I have to receive a message from God. I can only do what God says. He said the right thing. But stay overnight. Maybe God's going to come to me at the night. Maybe God's going to give me some kind of message. And by the morning, I'll let you know if I have any divine communication from God. Sure enough, that's what happens. Now listen to this. During the night, Bil'am has a communication from God, Nevuah, a prophecy, a real prophecy. And God begins the conversation by saying, who are these people that are staying over in your place? Why are they here? What do they want? And so Bil'am properly explained, well, Balak is the king of Moab, and he wants to send them to ask me to curse the Bnei Israel so that his army can then get the courage to defeat the Jewish people and take care of this Jewish problem once and for all. So far we're good? Everyone understands? If I am going off or if I don't understand, please just stop and let me explain, because it gets complicated. Okay. What was God's response? It could not have been clearer. Don't go. Finished. Don't go with them. So in the morning, Bil'am gets up, all these guests get up. No. Did you have any communication with God? What's the word? And Bil'am says, no, I can't go with them. I can't go with you. God told me not to go. God told me, don't curse the nation of the Jewish people because ki varuch hu, they are blessed. So I cannot curse them. So far, Bil'am's doing a great job. And now the Torah, if you read the Parashah yesterday, or whenever you read it, describes the back and forth that's going on of negotiations between Bil'am and the Moabites, as well as between Bil'am and God. So they send a second delegation, and eventually God says to Bil'am, okay, you want to go? You can go. I give you permission to go. However, this is the key, you may not curse Bnei Israel. You want to go? Go. Enjoy yourself. Take a tour. Have a nice ride. Then the Torah says that Vayakum Bilam Baboker Vayachavosh et Chamaro. Bilam gets up in the morning. He's so excited. I got permission to go. I can't curse, which is what they're hiring me for, which is what they're paying me a huge amount of money for. That's why I'm going. It's for the money. But God, we'll worry about that then. We'll deal with that later. Bilam gets up, and here's the trick. You can kind of see how much he wants to go do this for the money. He gets up and he saddles his own donkey. We see that phrase where Abraham uses the same phrase that says, he gets up in the morning, and Abraham was running to do the Akedah when he was told to take Yitzchak. The same language. Bilam is running to do this opportunity. I want to go curse the people. And he sets out with zirizut. He sets out with alarcity, with I want to go and I want to curse Bnei Israel. Now, the story in the Torah talks about the journey as it's going through this ride that he's riding on, this chamor, this donkey that we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes. An angel doesn't like the fact that Bilam is going, and he wants to prevent him from going. So the angel stands in the road to block the way. Bilam, this super Navi, this super Yodei Adat Elyon, he knows God's inner thoughts, this super sorcerer, this guy who's they're paying money to curse. I mean, what a business. You pay me to say a few words, and he must have been something. He does not see the angel standing on the road trying to block him. Why? Greed. He wants to go. Well, what happens over here? The donkey sees the angel there. And the donkey says, I got to get off the road. I can't go straight. This angel is going to kill me. If he's got a sword, he's going to kill me. We can't go straight. So the donkey turns off the road because she can't proceed and go straight. What's Bilam's reaction? Who knows?
It's the donkey.
Come on, you like this? Yeah, he whips it. He whips the donkey. And again, he tries to walk along the road. But this time, the road gets narrow. And there is a stone wall on either side. You got to go through like a little area where it's very narrow. I don't know, like a detour, something that happened over there. And again, this angel is blocking the path. And it's a very narrow wall now. It's a very narrow road with a wall, a stone wall on either side. And the angel is blocking the path. So what does the donkey do? The donkey sees the angel again. Does Bilam see the angel? Not a chance. So the donkey again turns off the road and is going to the side. And what does he do? He smashes Bilam's foot up against the wall. And this is important. Smashes his foot up against the wall. Bilam is upset. What does he do this time? He whips it. You read it. Good. He whips the donkey again and again and again. And what's with this guy Bilam? He's a super Navi. He's not just a regular guy. He was a great Navi from Midian. He knows Yodei Adat Elyon. He knows the knowledge of the Supreme One, of Almighty God. The question is, why is it so hard for Bilam to see that God doesn't want him to go? When you have a question, where's the first guy we always turn to when you have a question on Torah? Who's that? The rabbi. Yeah, no. Where does the rabbi turn to? The first question, first place we look, Rashi. Don't you hear Rashi every week? That Rashi says this, Rashi says that? Rashi explains it for us. He tells us the answer. He says it all started with a question. It says, when God asked Bilam, who are these people that are staying with you? Bilam says, God doesn't know everything. Wow. God needs to ask me who they are? If I play my cards right, I'll be able to fool God. I'll be able to pull the wool over his eyes, and I'll be able to do what he told me not to do. Curse the Bnei Israel. If God has to ask me who these people are, that means he doesn't know what's going on. And if he doesn't know what's going on, so what? He told me not to go curse. I'll curse, and I'll get paid, and everything will be just the way I want it. By the way, I said yesterday in my dirasha, Bnei Israel never knew any of this was happening. We never knew any of the story that Bilam's trying to curse us, and in the end his curses turn out to be blessings. We never knew this. So the lessons that we're learning, that's the important part of this parasha. But Rashi explains, many times God asks a question to initiate a dialogue, to get you in, no, how are you? Where are you? What are you doing? We do it all the time. You see someone you haven't seen in a long time, you don't know what to say, ask a question. How's your family? How's business? It's an icebreaker, initiate a conversation. Where do we see this with God in the Torah? Where did God ask a question? With Adam. He says, Ayeka, where are you? Where are you, Adam? God wanted to initiate a conversation with Adam. Where else do we see it? Very close to Adam, his son, Cain. He says, where's your brother Hevel? Cain just killed Hevel, right? God knows what's going on. He says, where is he? Oh, God doesn't. But God wanted to initiate a conversation. He wanted to get your attention. And so here too, God was opening a conversation up, but somehow, whether God allowed it or not, Bilam misunderstood the question. So what's the end of the story? Bekitzur, Bilam, instead of destroying Bnei Israel with his curses, Bilam ends up destroying himself, and he goes home in shame. So now, I'm going to share with you what the Gemara says. It's not what it says in the Torah itself, but it's the Rabbi's explanation of the Torah. You like it, good. You don't like it, you know what? Skip. When you watch the tape later, you can fast forward this part. But I love it. Gemara and Sanhedrin, this is the words of our rabbis, so we take it to be very serious. Bilam was from which country? Midian. Gemara says, no, he wasn't really a Midiani at all. Who was Bilam? What was he really? He was actually a relative of ours. Huh? I heard you say it, Lavan. He was either a descendant of Lavan or even Lavan himself, some say. Now, that would make him either a cousin or a grandpa of Bnei Israel. Lavan's hatred for the Jewish relatives, it's well documented in Torah. He was not a very nice guy. He was called Lavan Ha'arami, he was a trickster, and but what's surprising is the difference between a Lavan and a Bilam is, as dishonest as Lavan was, he always redefined his position as the truth. He always said, for example, he tricked Yaakov into marrying Leah instead of Rachel, right? And so he justified it. He goes, of course I did that. We don't do such a thing in our country, that the younger one should get married before the older one. Bar minan, chas v'shalom, haram. We're not going to do it. We can't do it. So now, who looks like a tzaddik? Lavan. And who looks bad? Yaakov. He wanted to marry the younger one. He goes, oh, we don't do that here. I don't know where you come from, Jacob, but over here in our land, we're religious. We don't do such a thing. He always defended his honesty by pretending to do what's right. But here, Lavan, Bilam, could be the same guy, was caught red-handed. How? Oh. Do you remember when Yaakov was leaving with his wives? He ended up with both sisters, you know that, right? They're both the mothers of Israel. And the children of the family, the tribes. He's running away. Lavan chases him. And they make a treaty. They make a peace treaty. And they make a peace treaty. We will never attack each other. We will never go beyond this point. We will never go beyond this point with intentions of harming another. Not me, nor my descendants will go beyond this rock pile that they made. They built they made a pile of rocks. Okay? And this rock is going to be our judge, and may the God of Abraham be our judge. That's what Lavan said. So Lavan, or here, somehow Bilam, same person, maybe, he swore he would not try to harm Bnei Israel. But what's he doing? He's just accepted money. He's just going on this trip. He's going intentionally against what God told him. I'll figure out a way to curse Bnei Yisrael. My intention is to harm Bnei Yisrael. So Lavan or Bilam's hatred towards Bnei Yisrael was distorted by his judgment, and it allowed him to think he could even fool God. A Navi of the Goyim. He thought he can fool Almighty God. Sometimes you have to know that when God is silent, you take that as, when there's evil and God is silent, you say, well, God is letting this happen. It's not always what's happening over here. You take it that way, but it's not that way. Lavan or Bilam thought that he could pull a fast one on God and get around the treaty. He thought God forgot about that pile of stones. He thought God clearly told him not to go, but God forgot about this thing with Lavan, how he swore not to go past this monument. And God, in Bilam's twisted mind, was making a mistake and was forgetful. And when God says, who are these people? He took that as an opportunity. You hear how that's a chidush, right? That's good. Isn't it worth coming to the class just to hear that?
Yes.
Bilam thought God does not know everything. So I'll break my promise, Bilam says, and I'll get away with it, and I'll make a lot of money, and I will be rich and famous, and I'll have everything I want. You start to look in the Mefarshim, the commentators, and there's one called Dat Zekenim. And the Dat Zekenim says, Bilam's chamor, his donkey, was smarter than he was. The donkey saw the angel of God blocking the road, and she pressed his leg against the wall. The wall. That same wall which Lavan built with Yaakov and swore so many years before we would never go beyond this point to harm each other. That's the wall that the donkey pushed Bilam's leg into, and Bilam actually became lame after that, Talmud says. So who was the greatest of all the Nevi'im ever in the world? If you say Moshe Rabbeinu, you're right. Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest of all Nevi'im. Sort of. The last three Pesukim in the Torah tell us, and they confirm, that Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest of the prophets. However, in one aspect, Moshe did have competition from Bilam, because Bilam was, again, Yodea Dat Elyon. He knew the mind of the Elyon, of the Supreme Almighty God. So what does this mean? So where do we turn again when we have questions on what does the Torah mean? Rashi. Rashi says, Bilam had the ability to determine the exact moment each day when God would get angry. And let me correct that. Not the exact moment. The exact second. Let me correct it again. The exact millisecond. I don't know any terms below millisecond, but if anyone here knows that. Nanosecond. There's a moment every day that God is angry for things that happen. Second, splits, part of a second. And Bilam had the ability to know exactly when that was. So Balak, who is now the king of Moab, contacted Bilam. I want to take advantage of your ability. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know that. But Bilam did. Balak was aware that Bnei Israel had just defeated the two giant countries over there because they were assisted by God. I mean, a bunch of slaves come out of Egypt and were wiping out big armies, big kingdoms. Balak knew he could not defeat Bnei Israel on his own. He needed help. So Balak hoped that a well-placed curse from Bilam would help him to defeat Bnei Israel. I can't see the clock. You let me know if I'm...
You're fine.
Okay. Remember I told you there was different groups of messengers that came to Bilam to try and get him to take this job? The first group of messengers came and they offered Bilam the job. And God appeared and told Bilam, don't go, don't curse the people. And Bilam actually refused to go, points to Bilam for that. So Balak sends a second delegation more distinguished, more chashuv, more important people, more money, more lucrative, and they try and convince him. And Bilam actually stood his ground. And he goes, I'm not going. Sort of. There's a pasuk that says that you can see what's really in his heart. He says, Im yiten li Balak milo beto kesef v'zahav. If Balak were to give me a house full of gold and silver, there's no way I can go against the word of God. But spend the night. Let's see what happens. In other words, if you were to give me not the money you're promising me, a whole house full of gold and silver, I could never go against the word of God, but stay overnight. Let's see what happens. Maybe, So what's he saying when he says, Im yiten li Balak beto malech chesed? God was telling him, okay, you want to go that bad? Go. God gave him permission to go the second time. However, he warned Bilam, he would only be able to say what God would allow him to say. And Balaam was saying, fine, I'll go. I'll worry about the details later. I just want to go. He didn't get it. Bilam, the smartest guy in the room, Yodei Adatto Yon, knows when God is angry, knows the secret of the Jews and their power of tefillah and prayer. He doesn't get it. And the rest of the parasha is basically describing events that end up frustrating Balak and Bilam. So an angel blocks Bilam's access to the road that we talked about, right? So it's all starting to come together. The great prophet didn't see the angel, but his donkey did. 3 times she refused to go past the angel. 3 times Bilam hits his stubborn donkey, who's not going to move. And then miraculously, this donkey starts to talk to Bilam. And Bilam doesn't bat an eyelash. He doesn't go, whoa, a talking donkey? Where did that come from? He's not even fazed by it. The donkey is talking, and Bilam, who's this guy who thinks I can destroy a nation with my words, is now looking around. Give me a sword. I want to kill this donkey. Only if I had a sword, I would chop your head off. That's what he tells him. He goes, if I had a sword, I would kill you right now. Wait a minute. The donkey is talking to you. The donkey sees an angel. The donkey is smarter than you are. And Bilam still wants to go. He said, I have permission to go. I have permission to go, and I want to go. And he still doesn't get it. So he arrives where the Jews are camped. And Balak is there. And they meet up. And he says, Balak, we got to sweeten up God before we do anything. You go build 7 altars and offer sheep and cows. And we're going to make a lot of sacrifices to God to butter him up, to sweeten him up, before we can try and curse his people. Bilam still doesn't get it. He's trying to build sacrifices to get God to do this. 3 times Bilam tried to curse Bnei Israel. 3 times. 3 times the curses come out as berachot, as blessings. What's the end of the story? Bilam gets fired by Balak, and he goes home in disgrace. What's going on in Bilam's head? Now again, remember, Bnei Israel don't know anything about this. This is all happening in the background. A lot of times we think God is being silent, God is, allowing things evil to happen. You don't know how much God is doing for you. How could a guy like Bilam make such a mistake? How could he not understand God telling him not to go? Okay, you can go, but you can only say what I tell you to say. And he still tries to curse us. He tried like crazy. And the answer is greed. Greed. Im yiten li Balak melo veto kesef v'zahav lo yuchal la'avor api Hashem. Even if Balak were to give me a whole entire house full of gold and silver, I still cannot transgress the word of God. You see right there, what's his focus? The gold, the silver. And that's his weakness. He was motivated by greed. And so he kept trying different approaches and build sacrifices and curse him from here, curse him from there, and he just wanted money. So according to the Gemara, Bilam, who was a descendant of Lavan, or maybe even, it's harder to believe he's Lavan himself. That would make him a very, very old man. But stranger things have happened in the Torah. People, the numbers in the Torah are very, very interesting. That's a subject for a lecture by itself. What does it mean when this one was this years old and this years old? And there's some very fascinating Torah on that. But it takes it's a huge thing. It's not for a time without coffee. So it's amazing what people will do for money. We often meet very religious people. They're very religious. They come to the synagogue every day. They give tzedakah. They do all these chesed mitzvot. You see them being honored all over the place. And then they walk into business, out the window. All these morals, all these religious things. And they say, well, religion is religion, and business is business. And I'm here to make money. And, that's what's going on. For those of you that may not know, I'm in the real estate business. And I do this for fun, the shul. But my real business is real estate. And I learned long ago that there are many of my colleagues that tell me the only way to get ahead in this business is just get the contract signed. There'll be times later we can change the terms, add a fee for this, add that, do this, do that. You see it with contractors. You see it with every business. People change the rules as you go along. And it's just terrible. That's not honesty. That's not the way it should be. Bilam's logical thinking and his fear of heaven, that he obviously did have a Yirat Shamayim, he had it. It was all distorted by his love for money. When your income for the year is decided? Rosh Hashanah. That's it. No matter what you do, it was decided already on Rosh Hashanah. So that doesn't mean you can sit home and just say, well, God decided I'm going to make money this year. Well, maybe you have to go out and you have to make your hishtadlut, you have to do your effort. But when we compromise our values, we see only the dollar signs. And who ends up making a donkey out of himself? Us. I can't say the real word in shul. There was a rabbi that went by the name Ohev Yisrael. He wrote a book called Ohev Yisrael. They call him the Apter Rav. And this book called Ohev Yisrael has a description of where Ahavat Yisrael, the love of the Jewish people, the love of Jews, is found in each parasha in the Torah. So before he published the book and put all of it into one book that you can buy, and I'm sure it's on Amazon.com, this book called Ohev Yisrael, he's sitting with his Hasidim, they're having Friday night, they're around the table, that's where the good stories come from, and the tish, the story. And so he says to them, come around, let's talk. Anyone have any questions? So someone says, yeah, Rabbi, where in Parshat Balak do you see Ahavat Yisrael? Every other parasha, I get it. But where in this parasha Balak that we're talking about, this Bilam character and donkeys and smashing legs against the wall and all these things, where do you see Ahavat Yisrael? And the Rabbi says, that's the easiest one of all of them. In the name Balak. In the name Balak? Yeah, he says, you take the name Balak, it's Bet Lamed Kuf, right? He says it's the Rashi Tevot, it's the initials for a very famous phrase, Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You have to love your neighbor like yourself. So the Hasidim said, but Rabbi, that's not how you spell the initials of Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Ve'ahavta is a Vav, l'reacha is a Lamed, kamocha is a Chaf. Vav, Lamed, Chaf. Balak is a Bet, Lamed, Kuf. Two of the three letters are different. He goes, Rebbe, it doesn't make sense. And he takes his hand, he smashes it on the table, and he says to the Hasidim, if you can't see this, then you have been missing everything I have been teaching you over the years. When it comes to Ahavat Israel, you cannot be medakdek on the otiyot. You can't be so careful, so concerned about the letters. When it comes to loving Jews, you can't be so strict. This guy's not so religious. This guy doesn't come to shul enough. This guy talks in shul. This guy plays with his telephone all the way through the tefillah. We all have complaints on everyone else. But when it comes to Ahavat Israel, he's telling us you can't be medakdek. You can't be so picky on the letters. So it's a bet instead of a vav. So it's a kuf instead of a chaf. We have to have Ahavat Israel, or we're never going to get anywhere. Especially in our times, we have to conservative, reform, reconstruction is gay, this and that. You don't say they're not part of us. Just say they haven't yet come to our understanding, but they're part of Am Yisrael, and we have to love them. And that's an amazing thing. You have to understand. So they said, okay, all right, Rabbi, you've made your point. You've made your point. But now tell me the truth. Where is the real Ahav? Now that you gave us the little, Balak, with the wrong letters, now give us a real one. Rabbi, I know you got one. You got something up your sleeve. Rabbi's always got something up his sleeve. You never know. And he says, I'll tell you where. One of the curses that Bilam said that turned out in his mind to be a curse, but it turned out to be a blessing? Very famous line. Ma tovu o'alecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu, ma tov. How good is the mishkenotecha Yisrael? And the ohalecha Yaakov, the tents of Jacob. And he says, that's where you find the true Ahavat Yisrael. What Balak and Bilam were looking at was they saw the tents of Jacob. That's the ohalecha Yaakov. They saw the tents. They saw the way we were living. They didn't see the whole Jewish people. They just saw a corner. But whatever happens to a corner of the Jewish people affects all the Jewish people. And he wanted to say, don't have Ohalecha Yaakov. Don't have Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Don't have synagogues. Don't have study halls. The Gemara says that the Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha, the Mishkan is the synagogue. Ohalecha, the Beit Midrash. Don't have classes on Sunday. You could be doing something else. Don't learn Torah. Don't. He wanted to wipe out, eradicate Judaism. He wanted to wipe out Moshe and all of his Torah and all of his people. O'alecha Yaakov, the shuls, the study halls, the centrality of Jewish life and spirituality, it's the synagogue. Bilam understood that the Jewish future lies in the synagogue. He knew that. Ahavat Israel, ladies, Ahavat Israel means an understanding and an appreciation of the role the synagogue and the Beit Midrash and the yeshiva and the day schools play in Jewish communal life. That's what we have to happen. We have more time?
I'm going to go over some laws of...
Okay. I have more time for this though?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're quiet.
They're quiet. Most of you probably have not been up too close to a Sefer Torah. I know one time Max showed you some things. One of the things that you can see, we have a custom when they write a Sefer Torah. There's certain things. They try and start most columns with a vav on the top, called Vavei HaAmudim. There's also a custom that there's at least 6 places in the Torah that the top line has to start with a certain letter. And it's the word B'yashemo. So, B'ya, starts with a bet. Bet, the first letter of the first word of the Torah has to be Bereshit. That was an easy one, right? Okay. Hey, there's a pasuk where it says Haba'im acharehem in Parshat Beshalach, the Bnei Israel that came, Haba'im acharehem, the Jews were going. It has to be on the top of a line. And you know what the other one is? Oh, there's 6, but Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov. In every Sefer Torah, you're going to find it on the top row. Ma tovu is the first words of that line of every Sefer Torah. That's pretty much a custom. That's universal. That's what happens all over there. So the idea is Ma tovu. That's the power of a community. That's the power of Ahavat Yisrael. When it comes to Ahavat Yisrael, you know where it has to be? Berosh Amud, the top of the column. That's where your love for the Jewish community, for the shul, for the yeshiva, for the day school, for the kollel, that's where your love has to be, at Berosh Amud, at the top, because Ahavat Yisrael is being tried today in so many different ways that we can no longer be midlakdek on the otiyot. We can no longer be just so worried about all these different types of things. Today is Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, and I really want to thank you for coming to the synagogue on a fast day. And I keep hearing about the coffee. It's called coffee and a shiur. So I think we owe you one. And but I did want to tell you just a little bit about Shiva Asar B'Tammuz and how it begins a period called Ben HaMitzarim. Between the rough days of Shiva Asar B'Tammuz is 1, and 3 weeks later, it'll also be a Saturday night, Sunday, it'll be Tisha B'Av, 3 weeks later. And Tisha B'Av, of course, is the anniversary of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. And much like an Avel, a mourner, during their time of mourning, that they refrain from certain things. Basically, from today, we are refraining from no weddings, no music, no live music. Should not even really listen to recorded music, according to some authorities. And then we get to Rosh Chodesh Av, and it becomes a little more serious. When it becomes Rosh Chodesh Av, we don't eat meat till after Tisha B'Av. Sephardim actually eat meat on the day of Rosh Chodesh. Ashkenazim do not. And Ashkenazim will start many strictures from 17th of Tammuz. We Sephardim are a lot more lenient. And then the most restrictive period is what's called Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av, which means from Saturday night before Tisha B'Av until Tisha B'Av, that's where we don't do laundry, that's where we don't do certain things. We're not bathing, for sure not in hot water, we're not doing a lot of things. We're not doing laundry, we're not doing all these type of things. This year, there is no Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av, because Tisha B'Av actually comes on a Saturday night. So this year, you don't have a restriction about laundry, you don't have a restriction about anything. We allow the children to swim all the way up until, not on Tisha B'Av itself, but all the way up even during the 9 days. And even if there was a Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av, I was asked a really important question about, can I buy new clothes? From the 3 weeks, from today, yes, all the way up till Rosh Chodesh, you can buy new clothes, but it's not, once Rosh Chodesh Av arrives, it's really not a good thing to buy new clothes till after Tisha B'Av. So you say, well, wait a minute. What if I'm buying these clothes as a gift for someone else? Can I buy them during the 9 days? The answer is no. Well, what if I buy them during the 9 days and I want to wear them after Tisha B'Av? The answer is no. There is an exception. Who knows the exception? Yeah, a sale. Yeah, you have to be careful. The idea is, if it's a sale like the mattress company has a sale, then probably not, because the mattress company has a sale every other weekend. But the idea is not that it's on sale. The idea is it'll cost you more later on to buy the same things. That's exactly what a sale is. But sometimes some companies raise their prices so they can have a sale, and you have to be smart. If you can just look around and you can shop online, shop here or there and find it for the cheaper price even after Tisha B'Av, don't buy it. Why? Because we're trying to realize that the Beit HaMikdash is gone. And so that's that. Haircuts and shaving, there's no problem this year at all. Women probably don't have a problem during this time. But there's nothing to worry about. Mending, sewing garments is okay. You can shorten a skirt. You can do things that need to be repaired. Having a new suit made or a new dress made, that's asur. That you cannot do. You can mend something that's already in existence, but that's that. The other day, we talked in the synagogue about real estate, one of my favorite topics. You can go into a contract during these 3 weeks. You can enter escrow. You could even close escrow, even during the 9 days, even during the week of Tisha B'Av, even on Tisha B'Av itself, you can close escrow. So that's the Shechayanu if I'm buying a new house. No. Why? Because if you know anything about the real estate market, it's so competitive that if you don't act quickly, you're going to lose. People are putting their homes up, they're sold within 2 days for cash, for above asking. So if you are in the market, don't worry. A guy called me, he wants to do something, he's got a home, it's sitting empty, he wants to rent it. He goes, but I'm going to wait till after Tisha B'Av. I said, so you're going to lose all of July, you're going to probably lose, forget it. Let's go now. You're losing money. So in any case, painting your homes, you don't do from Rosh Chodesh on. If you see us working in the synagogue, it's because I said it's okay. You're allowed to work in a synagogue. It's communal, it's different, because we are going to be doing some work over here probably during the 3 weeks and certainly during the 9 days to get ready for the holidays. We're doing some security upgrades over here. And unnecessary travel is something that should be avoided. Chacham Ovadia Yosef used to say, Ashrei Yosheveh Ve'techa. Who is praiseworthy? The one who sits in his house. In other words, it's not a time for travel. Is it allowed? Yes.
3 weeks or the 9 days?
In the whole 3 weeks, exact. But anyways, here's the deal. You got to take care of the kids. You got to go places. You got to do things. If it's really for simcha, you try and avoid it till after Tisha B'Av. If you have to go, you go. If it's for Shalom Bayit, you go. Call me, call a rabbi, call someone, and discuss it. But unnecessary travel during the 3 weeks should really be avoided. And even though we allow swimming during this time, all the way up to basically Tisha B'Av, supervise the kids carefully. And then Kabbalistically, there's I talked about this the other day in the synagogue. There's a idea that there's a certain demon called Ketev Meriri that is always waiting to attack us during this time, because it's a tragic time for Am Yisrael. Something's going on. And there's the story in the Gemara, a guy who was chasing after his friend to give him a pat on the back, maybe a little harder. They're friends, they're joking around. And the Rabbi Abba stopped him and he says, no, don't hit him. He goes, well, I'm just going to give him a light tap on the shoulder. I haven't seen him in a long time. I just want to get his attention. He says, don't do it. I see there's a demon behind you. Rabbi Abba was a great rabbi. He can see things that you and I will never be able to see. And he was going to harm this guy. He was going to kill this guy. From your little light tap, he was going to do it. So we have to be very careful. To hit out of anger is always asur. We never hit out of anger. But sometimes you want to give the kid a little patch in the hand, or whatever you do. Everybody has their own parenting styles. I'm not going to get involved in that. But the idea is just to be very, very careful, and during these times to be very careful about even light taps for just to be very careful. It doesn't hurt to be a little bit more careful about that. Okay, so now I spoke a little bit about the parasha. I can go for another hour if you guys want to, but I will stop. If there's questions, I'll be happy to take them. And if there's more specific questions on the ta'anit or the 3 weeks, that's fine. The end time for the fast tonight for Sephardim, it's 20 minutes after sunset. I'm going to go check the time. It's on the wall right here. And let me just see what it is. I think it's 8:29 tonight is for Sephardim, 20 minutes after sunset. Ashkenazim will usually wait 42 minutes after sunset, which means that it'll be a little bit later. So if you look at like the Chevra Kadisha calendar, it will say the fast is over 20 minutes or 22 minutes past the time on our calendar. We're following Sephardic Halacha on this. We're not too worried about keeping peace in the neighborhood. A lot of people seem to like it very much that we finished the fast 20 minutes earlier than the neighbors. So thank you very, very much. And again, we hope that these words of Torah were an aliyah neshama for Rachel bat Esther, Maskuda bat Leah, and we hope that you have an easy fast, but what's the word I'm looking for? Meaningful fast. Thank you. Without Ruth, I would. Thank you very much. Have a great day.